Hey everyone, my name is Alex and I'm one of the leaders here at the church. I am super happy to be here starting this video series with you. We're going to spend this summer exploring what it means to be a part of the movement, how we're going to live as a community, and we're going to explore this together. And how this is going to work is that we're going to start out with these sort of videos where Ginger or I are going to bring up a biblical principle or a piece of the biblical story. And then from there, we will come together on Sunday and then we will discuss the application of what that means. So we're going to take principles and concepts about what it means to be the church today, what it means to be the church in this community and this culture that we live in right now. And we'll talk through the biblical foundations of those things in the video. And then we're going to come together on Sunday, or if you're unable to make it that Sunday, you can follow along on Facebook and be able to be a part of that conversation there as well. And we will apply these things and explore what it means together and what we actually come up with and how we do this. You'll find that everything we do here is biblically rooted as much as we can. And so there's this idea that we want to tie to this. It's called Halakha. And Halakha is what's called the rule of the community. It's a set of laws or a set of standards that a community follows in order to be able to live according to the way that their culture understands the Bible in their time. And so the way we apply scriptures can be a little bit differently here in Kelowna than it will be in other places of the world because of the pressures and the things that are going on there. And so we're going to take these biblical ideas and we're not going to produce a legal system. What we're producing is a set of standards and practices that define us as the movement for who we are right now and how we would need to fulfill our mission in this community. And so one of the key words we also want to attach to this is the word partnership. That lots of places have a membership. Membership has its privileges, but partnership has its responsibilities. The point of this is to partner with you because we need to all do this together. That we are a community of faith who is the whole body working together and not just a few people who get to have a voice. That's why our slogan is giving voice to Jesus and his people. And we think that all the people of God are called and a part of the body to do stuff in the community. And so we want to be able to find how to equip and empower every one of our people in our church to come together and be a part of what's going on. Every member of the family has to contribute to the household. And that's what we're talking about here is how do we as a community choose how every member is going to participate and help take care of the things that are going on inside the movement. It's not just a one-man show. This is going to be the community working together to make sure that we all are doing the things that we're called to do on this earth. So let's right now find where we're going to anchor this biblically, this idea of halakha, and where we get this authority to do this. And this comes from a story that's based in a place called Caesarea Philippi, where Jesus has a conversation with his disciples. And so I'm going to read the story, and then we'll do a little bit of a back work, and we'll find out some of the groundwork, what's going on here historically. So let's do that together. In Matthew 16, 13 to 19, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." I think this is one of those places is a great place to start our conversation with Halakha. This is one of the first times that Jesus mentions how he's developing his church and what his church is going to look like when it's established. And so let's talk a little bit about the backstory of this place, Caesarea Philippi. It's a strange town. Caesarea Philippi is at the base of a mountain called Mount Hermon. And specifically at Caesarea Philippi, there's this place they call the Gates of Hades. It's this big grotto, it's a big natural cave structure made by an underground river that opens up, and they have a bunch of shrines in there to all kinds of gods, but predominantly to the god of the wilderness, Pan. Pan is this sort of half man, half goat sort of figure. When you think of our modern conceptions of what Satan looks like, actually the goat god Pan looks very similar to that picture. This area was also semi-volcanic. And so every once in a while, the waters from that spring would mix with some underground volcanic activity, and there would be gusts of steam that would come out of this cave system. They thought it was a passageway into Hades itself, into the underworld where the dead resided. And the things that were done there were really gross. There was a festival there every year to the goat god Pan that even Roman citizens looked at and said, this might be a little bit too much for me. And so this is not a wonderful place to take a bunch of young Jewish disciples. This would be a kind of one of those no-go places for Jewish people. But for some reason, Jesus chooses this to be the place where he has his conversation asking his disciples who they think he is. The hinge point of this conversation, I think, is this idea of, who do you say that I am? And as long as we are putting our faith, our trust, and our identity in the person of who Jesus is, that Jesus is our Lord and Savior, that he's our Messiah, he's the one who's going to rescue us, and who does over and over again rescue us from our things that are going on in our life. And so if we make Jesus center, if we make that the proclamation of our church, that Jesus is Lord, then we will be given the keys of the kingdom. We'll be given the ability to bind and loose. This is where our authority to establish our Halakha comes from. That he gives us the keys of the kingdom, the ability to bind and loose on earth, the things that we want to do and how we're going to operate as a community. And he's going to make room for that in heaven. He's going to bind and loose those things in the spiritual world. And so we need to realize what our mission is and how we're going to accomplish it, and then set aside our community values and our community practice to be able to be in line with the thing that God has called us to do. And all of these things will be in order because all of it will be submitted to Jesus. So every part of the body has a different function, and the movement is going to have a very specific calling and function in this community. And so in order to be able to do that specifically, we need to be really careful how we set our community practices. All of our community practices should be in line with the mission that we have as a community. The way I see this is there's two tracks that we need to be really clear on. Again, binding and loosing. It's like a set of ice skates, where we need to have things in line with culture and we need to have things that oppose culture. And in our movement, we're going to have one skate that's going to be in line with culture. So there's going to be things that we need to loose in our community and allow, things that we're going to be reduce as much friction as possible for entry into our community. So we need to culturally understand what's going on in our community and act like missionaries in our community to be able to know what areas of our community are essential that we stay in line with and we move in that direction. But at the same time, there's going to be things in our community that we can't abide, things in our community that are going to be a massive contrast point between our values and the community values. And we need to be really clear of where we're cutting against the grain. And we need to sharply be at an angle to our community and push against our community. And when doing so, by being in line in one way and opposed in another way, that actually gives us the momentum to move forward with our mission. And often when we're unconscious of that, we put the wrong things in the wrong category. And so sometimes it's actually harder to come to church. We do a bunch of weird cultural things. People come in and they feel alien and foreign. They don't know when to stand up or sit down. They don't know what the songs are about or what the order of service is, and they feel really awkward and strange. And so we need to find out how we can do the cultural work ourselves and produce a culturally relevant church that's in line with the culture. So it's really easy to be a part of the movement and really easy to be a part of the family and be able to belong to the community. But at the same time, we have to have principles and practices that cut across our community. Because if we're just the same as everyone else, we're two skates going in the same direction, we get no traction. We need to make sure that our Christian witness actually cuts across the values of our community and is something we can push against, even though we're still in line with culture in other areas. And so there's going to be things that we loose in our community that are going to be in line with our culture, things that we allow and things that we encourage to be able to relate to our brothers and sisters and relate to our neighbors in our community. And there's going to be things that are going to cut across, ways that we live as a distinct people, that we're going to be a set aside people. We're a royal priesthood, a holy nation. We have to live a separate lifestyle at one angle and in line in the other angle to be able to have traction in our community. And so each week, we're going to take a different aspect of how we're going to live as a community, a different aspect of family or discipleship, a different part of our practices and rhythms. And we're going to talk about how what the biblical mandate is in that area. What's the ecclesiological minimum, if you want to use our fancy jargon? We want to be able to find out what the Bible says about something, and then we're going to come together in person on Sunday mornings in the park or online on Facebook if you're unable to make it, and then be able to have that discussion of how we do that. So the one line is what the minimum thing is we need to do. And then we're going to come together to discuss how we're going to do it together as a community. What are we going to do in this and agree to each other that we're going to have a certain minimum guidelines on how we're going to live together as a community. And so it's important to be a part of the conversation. And so if you can't make it on a Sunday, that's fine. Just make sure that you're also a part of the online conversation on Facebook. And so each week, we're going to talk about a different aspect of what it means to be a family, what it means to be a community, what it means to be disciples, what it means to be on mission. And then over the course of the summer, we're going to collect all of these things as we go. And at the end, we'll review them all together in one big go so that we can see from a large scale to make sure that what we're doing isn't too easy or what we're doing isn't too hard. And then when we have all that collected, the goal is to be able to have everyone sign off at the end and say, yes, we agree for the next year that this is how we're going to live. Not for the rest of your life. You're not signing your life away to be able to be a part of what we're doing here. We're just saying for this next year, this is how we're going to choose to live in order to accomplish our mission. It's important that we do this together. We are a community of Christ. We're a part of the body all together. And together, we are the movement. By the way, one more fun fact. Over the course of history, only it took a couple generations for the church to fully saturate the Roman Empire. And as the gospel spread all over the place, the gospel in the 300s was the predominant story in the Roman Empire. It became, in most cities, were between 50 and 70% Christian. And so there was a pushback. In 361, there's a new Roman emperor named Julian. And we call him now Julian the Apostate because he tried to move the Roman Empire back to the old pagan god system. And he tried really hard. And one of the things that happened is that generations before that, Caesarea Philippi was so saturated with the gospel that all of the shrines were being covered over with stone or torn down, all the statues were being removed, and a giant statue of Jesus was commissioned and put in the center of town. And so then this was actually a well-known community to be it was a gospel stronghold. It was almost all Christians in Caesarea Philippi at this time. So it shows you that Jesus did establish his church here. But the fun thing is that Julian the Apostate, he saw this as a threat. And so he took the statue of Jesus down and put a statue of himself in its place. And I'm going to read to you directly from a Roman historian. We've got two Roman historians who tell us the story, but I'll read it from one of them right now. It says, Julian commanded that statue be taken down, and a statue of himself erected in its place. But a violent fire from heaven fell upon it, and broke off parts contiguous to the breast, the head, and neck, and they were thrown prostrate. And it was transfixed to the ground with a face downwards, at the point where the fracture of the bust was. And it has stood in that fashion from that day until now, full of the rust of the lightning. So I guess sometimes when God shows his judgment, he actually does cast down lightning bolts from heaven and destroy things. And so I thought that was a fun, fitting end to this whole thing, that God does establish his kingdom in Caesarea Philippi, and even to the point where when someone tries to replace his statue, instead God smites it with lightning. I thought that was a fun addition to the story.